live
Welcome
out of Uncle Tony's
closet. And today is the Adderall cast, 421 National Adderall Day. 420 is for weed, 419 is lesser known for LSD.
And 421 is the most important day.
We created a new one,
It's his
Adderall
birthday.
Day.
It is my birthday, too.
So we're making it Adderall Day.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do them, you do them all online. You go 419, 420, and 421 if you know what
Actually,
I mean.
the entire week from...
Fun fact, tomorrow is my mom's birthday, too.
So what does she like to do aggressively? What's her...
She'll probably drink a lot.
So that's National Drinking Day.
Okay, so tomorrow we're going to drink...
Bender Week.
Mom, don't watch
in
this
order
podcast.
to honor, his mother.
It's Bender Week. I like that. You like that name?
Bender Week. No, it's International Bender Week. We're starting a new... the whole thing is a holiday.
419 through 421, National Bender Week.
That's 3 days.
That's
Rookie numbers. We got to get those up. I'm saying from
like a whole week.
From whenever 419 is until the next week after that.
Okay.
7 days. 7 days of hell.
7 days of drugs.
And it comes right after Easter. So, you prepare for the binge by cleansing yourself, making yourself known before God in the holy light. And then you get absolutely fucked up the next 7 days.
So today, whatever time it is, podcast is a little different. We don't have a set topic this week. So we're kind of going to let it roll. We're going to talk a little bit about us, whatever we're thinking.
This is the grab bag.
This is, we're calling it on the fly, right? So we'll let Uncle Herbie start it off since he's in Tony's
Off the
closet.
phone, man.
I'm talking to Skylar about something tonight. This is important.
Okay, what we wanted to start off
Don't mind
with...
fucking Operation Dingbat in the back.
What we wanted to start off with was... so recently I had an LSD experience on Bicycle Day, and it was fucking rad. It was sweet. I felt like I experienced some awareness of the world, some things that,
What do you mean by awareness?
what it felt like to me was like all of a sudden everything was just a little bit clearer. So like, things in your subconscious that you might not know about normally will come up to the front of your mind and they'll be active, and you're aware of that, aware of things that you want subconsciously. And I thought that was really interesting.
All right. So that's kind of how you feel about that now. Continuing. Go ahead, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So what I was feeling like was that LSD and psychedelics in general are a great tool to get rid of anxiety, because when you're in that state, you might still experience the same anxiety, but it'll be different in your brain because it's not at the forefront of your mind. It's not controlling your life.
So you felt like psychedelics were helping with anxiety problems?
Absolutely. I mean,
do we have medical research on that yet? Is that a thing?
Well, actually, in Oregon, they have legalized a lot, like
everything.
Well, they legalized everything, but I think they're starting to do the
research,
medical mushrooms, because it has been helping a lot of people with their
and
psilocybin.
MDMA for
really?
PTSD,
okay,
ecstasy.
Psilocybin mushrooms have already been used in trials for depression. Also, ketamine is a great one.
I actually have done that before. I can confirm.
Experienced ketamine therapy. So, what was your experience on that like?
For me personally, it was just like, when I did it, it felt like you were having like an out-of-body experience sometimes. It just didn't feel like you were there. It kind of felt like you were just floating around in the air, just doing whatever. But whenever you try to walk and get up after it, it's just like, you can see, it's like everything's almost, it's like you have the spins almost. It's just everything around you is spinning. It's like, but you're walking straight, but it's just weird. It's a weird feeling to have.
There's like a disconnect between your body and your mind.
Okay.
So what did you feel like in your brain? Does that make it easier to like...
Well, for me, like, it was almost like a bad trip, almost, but like not really, because when I was doing it, I was watching like a Family Guy episode, and I had to replay like the same thing over and over and over again because I just couldn't comprehend it. It was just like kind of looping in my head, and I was like, wait a minute, did I already watch this? Did I not already watch this? So I replayed it again, and then I watched it for like. So I watched it for like 4 or 5 more seconds, and I'm like, hold up, did I just watch that?
Fucking up the sound levels.
And
He's
then,
always fucking up the sound levels, and we're fucking up your story.
It's alright. But either way, you guys get the point. I just kept replaying the same thing because I'm like, I didn't know if I like watched it or not. It was just, I kept getting confused.
Drinking
It was
pill.
weird.
Behind you.
What?
I need my drinky.
Yeah, I've had experiences like that.
But I actually did.
So the reason why I say that
So you ended up
psychedelics.
in the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
He ended up in the hospital.
No, you do the whole thing in the hospital.
It was like no, but
What do
it was
you
like
mean?
it was for a registered. It
It's
was
a
like
clinical trial.
Yeah.
Oh, you did it for a trial?
No, it wasn't a trial. It was because like I was in a bad state.
Well,
of
it's
mind.
like it's a prescribed therapeutic
So
experience.
they use ketamine in the hospitals.
Yeah, it's an antidepressant.
So what did you get? Is that what you got it prescribed for, or is that how they do it?
It was through
Yeah.
a mask. It was.
Was it for depression and anxiety?
So it's a gas drug. It can be
Another
through
thing-
gas form.
Another
Yes.
thing that they do, it's no, it's not laughing gas. That's something else.
It's like it looked like it because he had the mask on.
Right, but the thing they do is if you've tried a certain number of antidepressants and they don't work on you, then you're eligible for like ketamine or mushrooms or whatever it is that you.
It's kind of
That
like
is
let's see
prescribed
if,
for you.
since other stuff's not working, let's see if these
Yeah, it's
oddball-
pretty much
More
the
or
things
less
we
it's-
haven't studied as much. Let's see if these are
And
actually going to work
genuinely
because
speaking,
everything else
I think
didn't.
it has helped me. Like my parents said, like they noticed a lot of like mood swings, or
What
like, not
about
mood
you?
swings, but like me personally, I think it has like it just made me a lot like happier. Like
So
knowing, like,
you felt better doing that.
So
I
there's
felt
life
like-
changes even
I felt
now.
like there was more of a purpose to
Now-
what I was.
Now,
gonna
did
do.
it
I
change
felt
the
like-
way you think?
It didn't change the
about
way I
life?
thought about life, but it definitely changed the way I was like perceiving it. As in, like,
Were you?
I was like, man, what am I gonna do? Like, I didn't know. This was before I went to college. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I'm gonna go to college or not. Like, I didn't know if I'm just gonna be a dropout. And I was just like, I was so lost. I had no idea what to do.
That's
Did
why I
you-
took LSD for the first time.
Did you take any
Oh.
antidepressants? So to be eligible for that, you must have taken antidepressants before, and they
They
found it didn't work.
prescribed a bunch of
Zoloft,
they prescribed
Prozac.
Zoloft. They
I've been on
prescribed
So
Xanax.
none of that worked for you.
They gave me,
Xanax.
yeah,
You
they
were on
prescribed me
Xanax?
Xanax before. Yeah,
Wow.
they gave me prescription, and it
Honestly,
didn't
I
really
don't
do
think.
much.
Yeah, I don't think Xanax really helps.
I don't
No.
think Xanax should be a prescribed drug.
But it
I-
is,
I've
and
heard-
it's weird.
I don't think it
Make
should.
it a
This is the
recreational
worst
drug.
drugs ever. Like I took.
I don't even know if it should be
when
recreational.
I did
It's
it for the
addictive.
fun of it.
Turns
When I
you
did
into
it for the
zombie.
fun of it, I literally took, I think 3 blue bars, which are like 3
Oh,
milligrams each. And I thought I fell asleep the whole time, but apparently I was just driving around.
Just blacked out.
I was literally blacked out
And you have
driving
no
around.
memory of
I have
this.
no memory of this. I picked up my friend. We drove back to my house and we just smoked up, watched everything, and I just drove him back. But he told me I ran over some guy's mailbox.
So I had an experience.
Okay, that's
like that.
probably the least the
I had
least
something like
concerning
that,
thing you
but
could
it
do.
wasn't with Xanax. So my Xanax experience, I completely just fell asleep. So I don't
No,
really.
but so many people I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just fall asleep
And
usually.
I woke up and I said, "This shit did do nothing," and then someone said to me, "No, it did. It put your ass to sleep."
Mhm.
But
That's what it does.
I had an experience similar
Oh,
to that.
dude.
He's fucking up our sound levels. I had an experience similar to that with
Oh, boy.
alcohol, but I wasn't driving. So I drank a whole bottle of Casamigos one night, and I blacked out, but it wasn't a bad blackout.
Xanax?
No. There was no
was
Xanax
about
involved.
to say,
Yeah.
your stories straight.
So let me clear the air. There was no pills involved. But what ended up happening was, I mean, I blacked out off the bottle of tequila, and he's covering me up here.
This is rough.
We gotta plug in. This is just it's a homemade podcast. This is the
This
beauty
is
of
rough.
it. This is
But-
the beauty of it. But
All right.
Oh no!
oh no, we're back.
We're good.
I was about to say.
So anyways, I blacked out, but I was fine, and I carried on about my normal life. Now I wasn't driving, but
Smart.
obviously, we don't condone
Unlike
underage drinking and driving. We don't condone any illegal activities here.
So
The
I
problem
actually
is I had no idea that I was driving.
That's
Well, that's the
what's
scary thing about
That's what's
Xans.
crazy. That's
I literally
crazy.
thought I was asleep in my bed the whole
yeah,
time.
you wake up the next
So
day
you
and
thought
you're
you were dreaming.
I thought I was. No, I didn't even think I was dreaming about
You just
that.
didn't
I
even
had
know it
no
happened.
idea. I thought I was asleep the
It's
whole
just
So
time.
it's
a
the
black
same as
hole,
literally
just a
blacking out.
complete-
I
You had
literally
no
just thought
memory.
I was blacked out, and I just woke up the next day in my bed thinking I just did like Xans,
I wonder.
and I just
So
fell asleep.
you know, a
but no,
lot of car
apparently I did
accidents
so
will say
much.
drugs played a role.
yeah.
I wonder if a lot of times those drugs are Xanax.
I have
then,
two
because
friends.
they don't
Two
they don't
friends
realize
that I know.
if that's the case, then they don't realize they're doing
Exactly.
it.
No, I
You're
have
not
two friends
supposed-
that I know that totaled both of their cars off of
It
Xanax
says
'cause they didn't
don't
know they were
operate
driving.
vehicles or heavy machinery, but how can they actually prevent that? It's not like they take your keys and say, "Hey, you're taking this pill right now."
It's up to
We're
you.
Locking.
It becomes a personal
But why?
choice of whether you care about the
So
safety
my
of
question
other
is
people.
why do we do that? That's a problem. That's like, hey, let's give this society, this population we know of as the United States has an addiction problem, and it's overwhelming. I know heroin's an epidemic, but I'm not sure where Xanax stands on that scale. But
I think Xanax
It
is
has to
starting
be
to
an
get to the
epidemic.
point where because
a lot of young kids are using it.
Just
Honestly,
stay off of
it
it,
upsets me
please.
and scares me. If you're young, if you're under the age of 25 or 23, you really, first of all, you shouldn't experiment with pills unless you're prescribed them.
our age group is like the biggest impacted by Xanax because a lot of people's parents have it, so they
It's
can
easy
get
to
access
access.
to it
Yeah, no.
within the
Hey,
house.
I'll go in my, not me, but Sally and Joe can say they went in their parents' their medicine
Easily.
cabinet in the bathroom, and hey, there's Xanax, there's cough syrup, codeine, there's all these drugs
Prescription.
that rappers, and not even rappers, but we know like popular people are prone to having addiction problems with them. But what we don't see is that mainstream society also has that problem, but we don't see it as much because it's
Right.
not this popular person, so it's not getting that media.
It's not even just. It can be over-the-counter pills. I know people who've been addicted to Tylenol,
Really?
ibuprofen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And if you take Tylenol and
Athletes,
ibuprofen,
especially with like those pain relieving drugs, they get addicted to them physically.
yeah, our friend who was here yesterday had a stomach inflammation problem and had to go to the hospital because her stomach was completely fucked up by Tylenol. Just regular over-the-counter Tylenol. If you take more than, I'd say, 5,000 milligrams, or even more than 1,000.
1,500 is a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, if you take around 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams, it can have serious effects on your body. Ibuprofen can mess with your liver very
They both
easily.
can.
Even NyQuil is like a big one. So I think it's more about the fact that nobody teaches people how to cope without doing drugs or anything.
Mhm.
Nobody teaches people practices for relaxation and anxiety relief. We would rather give them these pills that cost money and that you can put a price tag on.
It is a business, but you went with relaxation. I want to hear from everyone, so I'll start with you. What do you do to kind of relax yourself? Because I found a new method lately that I never did before, so I guess maybe I should start. I'm reading a lot. I'm finding things that I like to read, whether it's a book or an article related to something that can help me in my everyday life, whether it's at work, outside of work, whatever it is. And I'm really enjoying reading things. So my new thing is reading books and articles and studies that I see online that are accredited. What do you like to do for relaxation?
So for relaxation,
Something that's progressive. Let's stick away from our experimentation with
I
drugs.
want to get into a
Yeah,
lot of these
okay.
Albert Hoffman books.
so actual, I guess above the counter techniques for relaxation. We're not just gonna say, go smoke weed.
Yeah, there's other ways to progress yourself. We don't, personally, I use marijuana to help with anxiety and other issues I
And
have.
it really helps. But okay, so back to your question. I view pretty much all of my alone time that I don't have to do anything. All my free time is time for me to relax and decompress and kind of get myself ready for anything that I'm going to have to do in the week. I try to meditate. It's very hard for people with ADHD because it involves sitting completely still.
I'm trying to start that too.
Yeah, and letting your thoughts, just pass by is also very hard. Also, if you can do any form of creative expression, like for some people it's writing, some people it's drawing, painting, whatever it may be, if you can find some form of outlet where you get out your emotions, whether it's anger, sadness, even happiness, if you just let it come out onto even just a piece of paper, you will feel better because in your mind, that conflict is sort of resolved.
So someone recommended
You know?
that to me, and like with reading. So
Yeah.
like when you read something and you want to take away from it, you know, because we can all sit there and read articles, books, and studies or whatever you read. You can read that, but what's most important is what you're going to take away from it, and to really instill that into you as an individual. Part of it, at least for me and a lot of people, this is a common factor, is writing it down and reading it over yourself. So you read a chapter of a book,
and you see how it looks.
you see this main key takeaway. You see, this is what I want to make myself do in the future and how I carry out myself or whatever it is. You write it down, and if you do that, you know, in every chapter, if you could do 1 to 3 things,
Take away one lesson.
or, you know, every chapter, every article, take a couple things away, but slowly input them in your life. You don't want to aggressively and, you know, suddenly implement a lot of changes
Because
into
then
how
they'll fall off
into
really
how
quickly.
you carry out procedures or practices or whatever it is you're working on. You want to
Consistency
slowly,
is the key.
You know, it's just like driving. You want to slowly ease into the gas pedal, right? Or slowly ease into the brake.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure you're doing that with these patterns. But yeah, like, you know, I'm very excited with how
Here's a
I'm
wacky
educating
idea.
myself with outside of, you know, college.
Too much life improvement is unhealthy.
It is, because it's too sudden. You can't actually get feedback on it when you're changing multiple things. If you change one process over an extended period of time and get feedback on that, you have real data. It's accurate. It's accountable. It's data that can actually be used to look at those things.
Yeah,
right?
try writing stuff down. Try writing down dreams if that's what you want to do. Try writing
Feelings.
down how your day went. Yeah, if you...
So, like, if you have negative feelings or positive feelings, you know, you'll agree with this psychologically. You know, if you have a patient, it would be better if they wrote down. So if they notice they have a problem, let's say they're diagnosed with depression, write down the depressive feelings you're having as well as others, so that when it's time to meet with your individual that you meet with, whether it's a psychiatrist, whoever it is, therapist, when you meet with them, lay those things out to them, and now you have them organized. It's all about organization.
So
It's
one of the
very important.
techniques in, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and I went through it when I had a brain injury. I had a concussion. And basically what they do is they break down whatever effects you're feeling, and they try to relate it to the way that you think and the way that you process information. So what my therapist told me was that there's certain what they call cognitive distortions.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you have a thought that's one of these cognitive distortions, what he told me was to write it down and then write down how the thought that I was having was actually wrong and it wasn't correct. Even though it feels like that in your brain, if you can acknowledge that it's just a trick basically played by your mind, then you can start to solve the negative emotions that you have and relate them to something else.
So, and I want to hear from them, but first, you know, I know you're obviously in school still, but think of yourself in the future. If you're someone in the psychological field, I mean, wouldn't it be very helpful? Because, you know, you have an allotted amount of time to meet with your patients.
About 50 minutes.
Right?
give
So,
or take.
and that's about how long I have. It was about 15 minutes to an hour. And I'm a talkative individual. So, you know, a lot of times what I want to get out is going to take more than that 50 minutes. So I never realized this before, but now, you know, with this whole writing things down, you know, notes, whatever it is, you know, because your phone's always with you. So take notes on your notes app, right?
Yeah,
Or
even if you have a little
text
notebook.
yourself, text someone. You know, if you have a spouse, just text them. It's a random text. They're not going to understand it, but just say, hey, I need that for later. You know, however you can get it conveyed so that it's done. Get it done. Don't procrastinate and say, I'm going to write this down later.
Yeah, because
But
you're
in
going to
your-
forget later.
In your you know, future endeavors, wouldn't it be helpful when you have that 50 minutes of time, if they can bring with you, and in their first quarter of that 15 minutes, if they can express to you, let's say you start them on a new drug. So again, back to that depression example.
Yeah, if they're on
Zolof's-
Prozac, yeah.
Zolof's popular too with depression, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
And
they're
anxiety.
on Zoloft and anxiety as well. Let's say they're depression and anxiety. So you say Zoloft's a good bet. Let's try it. It's good to see if that Zoloft's a good drug, because, you know, often we're prescribing drugs based on the sole factors of what's wrong. But the individuals are thinking about the side effects of Zoloft. Okay?
Everybody has a different brain
It's
anatomy.
individualized. Not everyone's going to have the same side effects. You can group them together and say this age group, this, that, and that had similar side effects, but they're all different. even in how strong those side effects are. So if I come to you and say, this is how I feel on this drug you prescribed me, here's the positives, because you want to hear both. You don't just want to hear negatives. Depression medication. Here's what I'm feeling. Now, personally, when I was on my ADHD medication, I would say, some of the positives with methamphetamine, I felt like I can complete tasks on time, if not ahead of time always. I always wanted to be ahead of the schedule. I always felt motivated to do things. I always felt like I had a purpose.
It gives you focus,
right?
And clarity.
Etc. So on and so forth. Now, some cons.
Oh.
Now, one of the examples I was using depression, but I want to keep it personalized to me because I never took Zoloft for depression or anxiety, but I did take Concerta.
Right.
Some of the cons I would list if I still was on it and I could, and I wish I did this, was I felt overwhelming anger issues. Not that I lashed out in these anger issues, but on the Concerta, I felt that, here's an example. If we're in, this was when I was in high school, we were in a math class. Sally answers the question wrong. And I think to myself, Sally's a dumb bitch.
You're wasting my time.
Sally's wasting my time because she doesn't know this. What the fuck is her problem? I should cut Sally up with a chainsaw.
Right.
That's scary that someone can develop that thought. And I wouldn't develop those thoughts before I started this medication, right? So I wish I could explain to these people that prescribe me these medications, because at first it was a psychiatrist, right? That's who can prescribe psychiatrist.
I had mine done by a general physician.
Is it psychiatrist or psychologist?
Psychiatrist.
So psychiatrist. But then I moved on to just my PCP. I stopped seeing my psychiatrist because, to be honest with you, I went and seen him on a repetitive schedule. He would ask me simple questions to fill in his documentation, and I was in and out.
It
was for insurance purposes. They got money for the visit. He didn't actually care. He wanted to hear from my parents a lot. Now, when you're on a ADHD medication, or you said you were on Zoloft for like depression, anxiety, right? You're on these medications. They want to hear from your parents a lot of times when you're a minor.
Yeah.
For me, it was how is he progressing in school and with his hyperactivity. Parents said, "Oh my God, he's not all over the place. He's actually not hyper anymore. His grades are up. The teachers." They make you do a report before you start this medication. Mine was all over the wall. He's a fucking nutcase. He's so smart, but he's so bad and hyper that
it cancels it out.
He's so smart.
Act dumb.
He does all of his work. He sits with the gifted kids, but he gets in trouble in school. So when you start that, and they're like, "Yeah, the first report's terrible," but then they see this major change. So they think the drug.
It looks good on paper.
They think the drug's working great. So I felt that anger issue, and another really big thing that I didn't notice, but now talking with people in psychology and learning about it in depth, and I started that in high school with a psychology class, but meeting you and other people who've been on this medication and you're a psych major, depression. Concerta, methamphetamine threw me into a really depressive matter.
Straight up zombied out.
Zombied out. There was times where I'd get in arguments with loved ones in my family over whatever it was, and I'd start to bring up, and I'd say and think about actually carrying out ending my life. I'd think about ways to do it. I'd tell them ways that I would do it. I would say, "I don't want to be here, you guys don't need me. I'm only hurting you." But what I realized is that was that medication. I never felt those thoughts before.
It's taking over your life.
It took over my life, but I wanted to take that pill every day because I loved how it benefited me as far as how I appeared. My grades were high. I was always an honor roll student. Honor roll, but I continued to be honor roll, but I didn't have disciplinary action. I wasn't in school 3 days out of the week. I was a kid that was in gifted program. I wasn't in the program, but I did everything those kids did.
They liked you, yeah.
I didn't technically meet those requirements because I didn't fill that test of here's the standards. But I can tell you I'm truly gifted. I was with those students. But anyways, I wasn't in school 3 to 4 days out of the week.
Yeah. Me too.
Because
detention,
Saturday detention, in school, out of school. But when they called my parents, he knew, just like my older brother, I learned he wanted to be out of school suspension. So my dad always said, no, put him in in-school suspension, give him a packet of work from every class, right? I was so smart, and I was in there. And I'll never forget the one time in high school I was in school, and one of the teachers in school was the gifted coordinator, who I was really good friends with. I still am good friends with this individual.
And she said you should be in this class.
He said, you shouldn't be in here. And this is when I was on medication, but I would stop taking it at random times because I hated how I felt. I wanted to change that. I was so lost in that.
I'm pretty
he said to
sure
me,
I can speak for all of us kind of having an experience like that.
Yeah.
he said you gotta. He even said to me, you can't take this medication because of the pros.
All right.
Even
Sorry,
because
I got to dip early on the...
wait,
It's alright.
he's dipping, but we'll get back to it. It's his
Our
birthday.
special guest is leaving. He's got important birthday business.
So, but anyways, we're gonna watch him leave. Goodbye.
What?
The gifted coordinator, he said to me, "You're an amazing person, but like, you can't have this disciplinary outbreaks. You know, think about it in real life experiences. You're great at your job, but if you do unethical things constantly and you're always breaking the rules,
Nobody's gonna like it.
no one's gonna like it. You can't.
You have to be able to play well with others. That's like a big thing.
and
That's
another
what they
thing-
want to teach you in school.
The most important teacher that gave me feedback with this was my band teacher. So he filled in at the high school and the middle school. So when you were in middle school, it's grades 5 through 8, high school's 9 through 12. And I remember when I had him in band in 5th, 6th, and 7th. 5th and 6th grade was before I got prescriptions around that time. Maybe
I
in,
see. Yeah.
no, actually I started in 5th grade, at the end of 5th grade. But in 5th grade, before I had it, he always would call home. I'd get kicked out. But I was I was a percussionist. I was so good at music. And I was passionate about it. But he couldn't handle my behavioral outbreaks. I was the class clown. I was always, we'd be quiet. He'd be giving feedback on the music performance. I'd sit there. He'd say something that was a dirty joke. Maybe we could take it as middle schoolers. I'd go, ba-dum,
Right.
stupid things. But I'd get that reaction I wanted. I'd laugh, but I'd get kicked out.
Yeah.
But when I started that medication, he noticed that change. He loved it. But then, once I got into high school, he noticed the negative effects that went with the positives. He said, "You're really great when you focus
So it
with this
actually
stuff."
got worse.
But I noticed that you hyper-focus. I would skip lunch. There'd be time periods throughout school years where I'd go to lunch with my friends, I'd cut up, I'd laugh, and I'd be friendly with them. But then I'd feel like they were being friends with me to not be friends with me. They'd talk about me. So
Like
I distanced
fake.
myself.
Yeah.
I felt like, and that was anxiety. That's a depression. So I distanced myself, and then instead of going to lunch and talking to them and cutting up, I'd go to my band teacher, and I'd sit there, and I would do schoolwork or work for my business, or I would work on band stuff. Or I would just sit there and talk with him. He'd play the guitar, and I'd smack on the drum pad or something.
Yeah.
But he talked to me about how it's cool that you distance yourself, but when it's in patterns like this, it's noticeable.
It becomes unhealthy. Yeah.
It's unhealthy.
Just like everything.
It's good that you're controlling your outburst of hyperactivity and you can focus. But he could tell I was becoming a zombie of the Concerta. You're another byproduct.
Yeah.
And Concerta is meant to help you with ADHD, but they don't talk about the suicidal thoughts. I never had actual actions with hurting myself, but I'll tell you, I came damn close.
Yeah, for me it was, I would kind of
Did you
shut
have
down.
any hurting yourself or thoughts of that while you were on it?
So actually, if we really want to get into it, for me,
If you don't want to personally, that's fine, but I'm just curious.
I'm fine with talking
Because
about
I want
it.
this drug to be fixed. I don't think it's okay that people feel this way because we don't actually get help when we feel this way.
Yeah,
That's the problem I had, and that's why I refused to take it.
Looking back on it now, during so the last year that I was on the medication was my freshman year of high school, and
So you stopped when I I started in 5th grade, but I was on. So you started when I stopped.
no, so I actually started in the 4th grade,
Okay.
and it was kind of similar. It was like, everybody loved the way that it made me act.
As far as behavioral, right?
Yeah, they liked the way that I wouldn't.
Were you
Become
always
angry.
a smart kid though? Before you took some medication, were you like me? You were always smart. You were always ahead of your classmates. The teacher was going over the question. You were already done with the worksheet. That was me.
Yeah, I could never find enough stimulation in the actual schoolwork, so I would try and
that's perfect.
Either
That's
do
it.
as much work as I could, or I would spend classes reading books. You know, in my second grade year, I probably went through every book in the class.
Dude, they wanted me to read so bad, and I think they tried to do that to help with my problem, but I could never get around it until now. But I know friends that are similar to you that reading was
that
an
was my
escape
outlet.
for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I had this like very active imagination, it was perfect because.
Did you guys have like a reading program? What was it called?
We had like a classification system where like based on your reading level, you're a certain.
What was that called?
We had dots like stickers.
Yeah,
that they would assign
they were text or lextile or textile. You know what I'm talking about? The colors meant something though.
Yeah, they have
for like reading level, and then
there wasn't a name for it. It was just.
I didn't have that.
Okay, so I know what you're talking about though.
Okay, yeah, but even in elementary school, I was ahead of my grade in terms of reading level, but assignments, homework, that was the stuff that I struggled in.
Same thing.
Because
what about getting your agenda signed? Did you guys do that?
We had to do like a reading log.
So how often did your parents sign it every time? Because I found a way to start forging my parents' signature.
No, almost never. I never went.
I either didn't get it done or I forged it after so long in the school. I forged it, but yeah, I struggled with homework and like those type of things.
So the problem is. So ADHD is one of a few mental disorders. So autism is directly linked to having high levels of intelligence. Depression is directly linked to having high levels of intelligence. I believe ADHD, I'm not entirely sure, but those three they kind of define people who have really high levels of intelligence. If you ever met somebody in school who was very bright, but they couldn't control themselves in social situations, it might be something like that,
So, did have like depression and self-harm like issues with your medication? When did you notice those start to take effect? In high school, you said freshman year, is that it?
No, it was as far back as elementary school.
You noticed you had depression and self-harm thoughts?
I thought about...
Can we Google, like, I just want to see, is this common? Or is this, like, if us two are talking about it and him, I know we've talked about all three of us having this issue. So if all three of us here, we've all taken Concerta or methamphetamine. What were you on? Were you on any actual prescription ADHD?
Yeah.
What was it?
I've done Strattera.
So that was natural. It was supposed to be natural medication. Have you done any like?
No, Strattera is a chemical.
Is it?
It's more like it's an SNRI, a
Wait.
neoepinephrine reuptake
Yeah,
inhibitor.
Depression in young children. Can you type in
I tried Zoloft,
ADHD meds?
lithium, which is a mood stabilizer.
Let's say Concerta.
On Concerta, yeah, because like honestly,
But
I want to
from
see.
the doctor, I tried all those.
We're small voices here, but I want to see a change in this. This is like something that.
Wait, hold on. I got a question for Randy.
Yeah.
Did the medicines ever help you? Like, was it always bad, or were there good periods and bad effects?
I had good periods and bad effects.
Yeah, it honestly, it was
It went in
completely
stages.
different for every chemical. But, like, I tried them one at a time for, like, months at a time, half a year, until I, like,
That
like
seems
I was on
rare.
Zoloft for
I don't
probably
like that.
the longest, and it took quite a while before I got, like, super manic every day, and, like, pretty much everything you guys have been talking
So
about.
my
Zoloft
doctor
was
wants
by
me to
far the
try
worst.
Zoloft, and I'm scared because of the manic outbreaks.
No, it is by far the worst thing I've ever taken.
And because I have ADHD, I'm more prone to bipolar as well as depression.
They tried to put me on lithium for bipolar
Now,
disorder.
my mother
It's
has
not
severe bipolar issues, and she can't take medication because the medication for bipolar actually like hurts her more.
Okay, I don't know if this is what you were asking, but 10.6% of youth experience problems with depression. And they have to go about their lives, do school, do work, all this different stuff with symptoms of major depression and not necessarily knowing that that's what's going on,
So 10.6%.
For me, that's just how my life was. Yeah, so...
That's not that use Concerta. That's just 10% of our youth.
Over 2.5 million people, so...
Can we see the percentage of on Concerta? Let's see if it populates. I want to see what percentage of Concerta youth, teens, experience that? Because that article you just pulled up that we were looking at before said it's rare, but I know it's not rare. That's them writing it to look that way. It's not rare if all three of us can say that.
I think it's one of the most common side effects.
We come from so many different areas. I mean, look at where we come from geographically on a marketing standpoint.
Did you guys ever have any of this?
What does it say?
Decreased appetite.
Yes.
That was one I had.
Dry mouth, yes. Insomnia, yes. Dizziness,
Insomnia,
yes.
definitely.
I did have abdominal pain. They thought my pelvic. They thought what is it? The area in your stomach that can blow up? Not your pelvic. Your
appendix.
They thought my appendix was. I thought my appendix was going to rupture multiple times, and it was just.
Concerta.
Here we go.
That had to be it.
A Concerta once.
So psychiatric symptoms include aggression and hostility.
I had those so bad. It
as
made
well
me
as
sad.
depression. Yeah.
It made me so sad. Like my friends. I remember this one girl I was such good friends with, and she was so smart. And I remember when she answered something wrong in calc once, I thought about like cutting her up, like that.
Oh, so that's a real example.
Like
right,
psychiatric, like isn't that scary?
Okay,
coming from someone that studies psychology, like interesting but scary.
It's not outside the realm of normal, though.
So I can make it pretty simple, really quick. Regardless of the chemical, Concerta, Adderall, Vyvanse, methamphetamine, cocaine, regardless of the chemical, all stimulants, when abused for long periods of time, lead to mania or psychosis. And those are all just flat-out symptoms of psychosis.
So they lead to mania and psychosis?
Yes.
Okay, so...
SSRIs can also do that, like antidepressants and anti-anxiolytics, but stimulants, like, do it way harder, way faster. And it'll happen pretty much in almost anybody. Like, if they take enough stimulants on a daily basis, like, it will happen to you. Like, there's no doubt about it.
So could it be due to being overprescribed then? Like a too high of a dose?
Yeah,
like
they're
mess
giving
with my
it to...
dojo.
I think
giving
it's
it
just
to
too much
children.
exposure over time. It kind of like... It changes the way that your mind is working.
It changes the chemistry of your brain.
Yeah.
So like overall, we see many...
So when you say psychosis, do you mean that if you were to take something like one of these medications for too long, you would have the same symptoms as actually being psychotic?
Like repeatedly?
Pretty much.
On a
but
repetitive level?
But it's not like permanent. Like
it's at
random.
random.
It might be able to. I don't know
could
about
be.
it being permanent. But it's just like, especially with drugs that affect dopamine receptors, which most stimulants do, like it'll just fry your dopamine receptors, and like your body just like won't know how to process it properly anymore, and that's what leads to like all the suicidal thoughts and like wanting to hurt people. Like,
right.
Because you're at a loss.
Your brain chemistry is imbalanced. Your brain doesn't have the right amount of...
It's gave its all and it's fried. I mean,
Yeah,
it can't put out anymore, right? It's beat.
Dopamine,
it's literally been defeated.
Dopamine is like the biggest. It's the biggest thing in our brain that we fuck with constantly, because nowadays pretty much everything is manufactured to give you dopamine. So if it's high fructose corn syrup or even your phone or anything like that.
Things.
Everything that we say is evil on this podcast is basically, you're messing with the way your brain is working. And by giving yourself really short-term rewards, you make it harder for yourself to envision longer-term rewards or longer-term
We always want to satisfy ourselves
benefit.
Immediately, and we don't realize how much that harms our long-term goals.
Well, another thing about ADHD is that it's been proven that ADHD is some of the symptoms that you experience are caused by having a shortage of dopamine. So your brain won't accept enough dopamine the same way that if you have depression, your brain won't accept the right amount of serotonin or, oxytocin, all these other things that you need. So the reason why people with ADHD are constantly moving around and trying to do things is because they need that stimulation. They need to feel... If you do one task, you won't get the same amount of dopamine as someone with a normally functioning brain. So you need to, start 8 different things and then bounce back and forth in between them. And that's that's why you lose focus, I think.
So, overall then, we see there's obviously positive effects with these medications to treat ADHD.
Yeah, otherwise they wouldn't exist.
Depression. But, and as well, there's obviously these positive effects, but we know that with any positive effect, there's at least 2 negative effects to go with that, right?
Yeah.
Typically. And we're seeing here, through just us 3 guys talking that come from 3 completely different geographical areas, similar interactions and similar feelings.
Yeah, we've had almost the same experiences.
But yet the internet wants to tell us that it's a rare side effect.
Right.
So my question is it really that rare or is it not? But that's obviously a more deeper topic, and that goes into big farm.
I think it's an issue. Like that. I think if I was to speak on it, it's an issue of it's very prevalent, but it's hard for people to talk about because, like you were saying earlier, doctors don't maybe trust children and young adults, teenagers as much with the information that they're trying to get out of them. So they won't.
Like when they ask the kids' parents,
exactly,
how
they
are they
won't
acting now on this medication, right? They'll ask you how you feel, but what they're really recording and going off of is what the adults say. But
because they think they're more credible.
They're more credible, but why are we, and again, this is just me lashing out, but why are we giving kids at such young ages these such strong, addictive drugs?
Yeah. I'm
without
sure
listening to them, actually. Let's actually listen to them. And we know it comes down to big pharma and money. But
well, the people who know about this stuff are our generation. So
this stuff, so it's time for change. It's too late for change, as a matter
awareness.
of fact.
We need awareness of not just mental health, but everything that goes into your mental health. And there's been a big movement of people trying to educate people about mental health and about, different disorders you might have. But really you need to learn the way that your brain works and what's best for you.
Yeah, because everyone's different.
Yeah, what's best for someone else.
The way each drug affects you is different. The common side effects for this drug is this, but in reality, when you take it, you could feel a whole different list of side effects that they may not even have had listed before.
Yeah.
Because everyone's body makeup may look the same, but in reality, it's completely different, especially on a mental spectrum. We know mentally that no one person is like us in exactly the same. Maybe similar traits, concepts, or ideas, but in totality, totally, it's never the same.
Yeah, everybody's completely unique. And I think we have to understand the way that other people will think or feel is always going to be different to us.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than trying to get them to feel the way that you do, try and get yourself to think about it from their perspective. And that's just a useful tip in general in life.
Mm-hmm.
But specifically with this issue, if people were to pay more attention to the kids who are saying that they have problems and the people who are outside of the range of normal, that's when we'll start to fix big problems like this.
And I think the word normal is funny because, their description of normal and what's, societally and currently normal are 2 different things. The normal they're looking at is a normal that we looked at many years ago. Are we looking at the normal of now? We're in 2022.
Normal is different now.
We can sit here and talk about what's normal to us. For example, gender identification. That was never something that was common prior to the
I think it
20th
just wasn't
century.
Accepted. You didn't have, if you were a person who identified that way, you didn't have a way to make people understand.
And make it understand, right? But now we're starting to be understanding of that. We realize that if someone wants to identify differently, that we should understand where they're coming from to understand that not only that it's okay, and we can't just not be okay with it because it is what it is. If you want to identify differently, that's, somewhat you're given.
It's up to you.
It's up to you. I'm not going to say it's your God-given right in the Constitution, but it's up to you. And as other members of society, as other animals per se,
you could choose to not accept the person and single them out and make them feel bad, or you could just not,
and when you single them out,
accepting.
You as a person that singles them out, you feel something yourself.
Right.
So you may feel better in the moment by singling them out, but in the long term, I guarantee you're not going to feel.
Yeah, it's not right. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and so no matter how different someone may seem to you, there's still going to be things that you can relate to and ways that you can accept that they're also, going through their own version of life.
And I think that with these drugs that alter the way our minds work, I think they're great. But I think that we need to look at, and to summarize, I think we need to look at how they're affecting people on a negatives as well. We talk about, and in the commercials, when you see a commercial for a drug, they list all those side effects, but
And they talk so fast you can't even understand
yeah,
it.
but let's actually address them and bring them to light so that we don't have people trying these drugs at the diagnosis and prescription of what we consider doctors, for them to end up not getting better, or getting worse and hurting themselves, or even at the utmost extreme killing themselves, because that happens.
Yeah,
because of these drugs.
SSRIs have a very high suicide rate in patients. Pretty much anybody who has them is, like, that's one of the side effects is suicidal feelings and depression. Like with Concerta, it makes you feel like shit. So what we're going to try to do is to teach people how to fix themselves without going to that point.
And if you're on them, talk to your psychiatrist or your doctor. Don't be scared to realize that those individuals, they work for you. They may be sitting on the other side of that desk behind a computer, so you feel that they have authority, but in reality, they don't.
Yeah,
you are the authority. You tell them, this is how I feel. I don't like that I feel this way when I take this drug. And it's their responsibility and their job to fix that, address that, identify that, and make it right.
Yeah.
And as those doctors and those people responsible for that, if you're not helping your patients be better, to find alternate drugs that are better suiting them, because it's a personal level. Like we said, no one person is the same. So if you're not going to do that, then turn your license in, close up shop, and stop doing what you're doing, because all you're doing is continuing to harm the world and put us in a worse, a more destructive path.
Yeah, doctors...
If you're a doctor, you should want to inhibit change. You should want to spark that change. Be behind it. Be the reason change came, that they talk about it for hundreds of years to come. Not following that same doctor's path. Challenge those typical policies. And it says in the book that if they have XYZ symptom, then they get a drug. No. Challenge that spectrum. Find a B drug, a C drug, a D drug that can not have the same side effects as A, B, or C.
Yeah, I think it's just the willingness to go outside of what's already accepted and what people would do normally. You have to be able to find your own solution and something that works best despite what everybody else says. So if you're willing to experiment and kind of, go out of your way to help people, then that's how we...
Because that's those doctors, that's what they're doing. They're engaging in experiments. If you're prescribing your patient this drug, you're going to see and you should want to know what happens when they take that drug. Everything about it. Even the stuff they don't want to talk about, you're supposed to try and pry it out so that you can understand. Because
absolutely, you need to know everything.
In your pharmacology classes and where you're learning about these drugs, you're going to learn about the textbooks and the information that we know about them, but we should focus on what we don't already know so that we can add that. If we can add that methamphetamine, known as Concerta, rather than rarely but more commonly causes depression and psychological issues in adolescents and teens, then we can move away from that drug. Although whoever's manufacturing that drug is going to take a profit loss, we shouldn't all be about money. And that's the problem with capitalism.
Money over morality.
Customer loss.
Yeah, we should be more focused on making these people's lives better by finding drugs to do that. The whole point of drugs is that. It's not to have bad side effects and fix one problem but cause 6 more side effects. That just doesn't make sense. That's putting a piece of paper over a hole in a boat.
Right.
It only lasts 30 seconds before the fibers dissolve and it's coming back in.
Yeah, and the bigger the crutches that you build up to yourself, that you're holding yourself on, the harder it's going to be when that's taken away.
Exactly.
So if you can try and not make yourself dependent on things, if you can figure out how to... I guess I'm not saying fix yourself because it's not that easy. But if you can...
It's not that you're actually wrong. It's not fix yourself because it's wrong, but Fix yourself to better yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Don't think that you're fixing yourself because the way you think or act it's not normal or it's wrong, because that, to me, that's not a thing. That's a spectrum. Just like autism's on a spectrum, normalism is a spectrum. And we all have a different spectrum and a level of measurements for what we identify that as.
Right. Because nobody's going to be perfectly in the middle of normal and they're just completely not,
That would just be perfect.
different.
It would all work out great if that was the case, but it doesn't.
No, yeah.
That's the greatest part about humans.
Life is
it's like
strange. Yeah, life is not perfect. But to go back to what I was saying really quick, if you can rely on more than just the medicine you're taking to fix the problem that you have, start researching things that you can do to maybe relax yourself or whatever your problem is, things that you can do to fix that, other ways that you can change your life in order to make it easier for you, that will help you more than just the medication, which might end up harming you.
Can I say something about that?
Absolutely.
I feel like the biggest problem with those kinds of medications, like what you were just talking about, they give them out as crutches to people. But I feel like it's becoming more and more commonplace to prescribe medications to people with those kind of mental problems without giving them psychiatry or therapy. Like, whenever I was going through it, I was only talking to a therapist for the first, 2 months of it. And then they had me just on meds and even switched up my meds, 2-3 times without, anybody
Weaning you
asking me
off.
how I felt.
And that's another thing with drugs. Decreasing the intake. Certain drugs you can't just stop, and one of those is methamphetamine.
Yeah.
And I did that.
I cold
Whether it was
turkeyed
a
as
day
well.
I forgot, or it was a day or a week or months where I said, I don't need this drug. I'm gonna take it out of my life. I don't agree with this. Well, there's negative effects to that too, and you need to make patients aware of that so that if they are gonna take that route, they don't hurt themselves more.
Yeah, and if you're experiencing a problem and you don't know what the cause of it is, a lot of the time you're going to attribute it to yourself, and you're going to be like, what's wrong with me? How come I don't feel good even after I stop taking my medication? When in reality, it's still in your system and it's still doing, some form of work, having some effect on you, and you might not know it. So if you can, try and be as aware as you can of your emotions, your bodily health, mental health, all those things.
Mental health especially is when you're using drugs, prescription or non, your mental health is something you need to keep a big eye on, because it's something we're still learning about. We know a lot about physical health, but as someone in psychology, we're still learning about that. So make those things prevalent, make them known so that we can help further this medical experimentation or whatever you want to call it, so we can further this information.
The revolution.
Yes, let's revolutionize medications.
That's what we're here for.
And I'm so happy that youth people like us are willing to speak up about it, because, our parents are so quick to say, throw him on that drug, write that script, He's
Imagine
hyper as
if
shit,
they-
bouncing off the walls, give him Adderall, he'll be fixed, I already know it. Usually when you go into your doctor, if you tell them, hey, I have anxiety, I need Xanax, they're definitely not going to write you a script for Xanax. But if your parents say it, yeah, they're probably going to write you a script for it.
They'll trust your parents even if they don't know what they're
so
talking
make it
about.
known. Make it known, mental issues especially, but also any other, like you said, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Focus on them. Find other ways to target them on top of your medication. If you're getting medicated for depression, find natural ways to target your depression on top of your medication, so that when
just
you want to
things
stop,
to make it easier for you to adjust to your regular life.
Exactly.
While you have this mental illness going on.
It would be nice if, when you showed up to get your medication, they also taught you about coping mechanisms and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's what therapy
they
is
don't
for.
bother digging in and finding out why. They just put a Band-Aid on it and act like it's going to stick.
For example, this medication can cause depression. So if you do feel depressive thoughts, here are some examples of what depression may feel like, because depression's
There's a ton of
it's
symptoms,
questionable.
very long list.
A lot of people are depressed and they don't even realize it, or they'll say they're not, they'll strongly oppose against it, but what they don't realize is they actually are.
People don't know that back pain is a symptom of depression.
I didn't even
If
know
you
that.
experience prolonged back pain, it might mean that you have something going on in your mental, bubble that's really affecting you. Or it could be
Perfect
decreased libido, an entire
example,
list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Things
so,
that don't technically raise a red flag.
Right.
This is
Sleeping
depression.
problems, eating problems.
Depression, you might say harmful thoughts or actions, or you don't get out of bed, or you have no will to progress. Okay.
Because you might not even notice a change in your mood. If you have a certain personality where you're, say, pessimistic or cynical, people might not notice if you become depressed because it seems somewhat not out of the ordinary. So you have to be aware of everything that goes into it.
Folks, today in Uncle Tony's Closet, we covered a lot. We got into some personal issues, personal experiences with, prescribed drugs for known diseases. I guess ADHD is a disease, right?
Yeah, and I thought we were going to be lighthearted on this episode with the 420 episode, but
it kind of got serious real quick.
Yeah,
And
this is a big topic.
so we
I'm
want to
glad
hear
we covered
feedback.
this.
Let us know if you guys have used SSRIs or
Anti-anxiolytics.
whatever.
Experiences, any of your
ADHD
stories,
medication.
we
If
will
you
read.
specifically have used Concerta, methamphetamine, anything you have used that has altered the way you carry out your life in a negative way or positive, give us some feedback. We'd love to talk about it. We'd love to learn about it because you never know the next time a doctor is going to say, hey, I want to try you on this drug.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when they say that, it's a sales tactic. They're technically trying to talk you into it,
Yeah, there's some that it's almost like commission for prescribing people drugs. So you get a certain, addition to your paycheck or some kind of reward for giving people Xanax or
Just
whatever
realize
it is.
if you're not buying the product, what are you, fellas?
You are the product.
So when you go to the doctor, you may pay a copay, you may pay something small in your prescription, but you're not paying for it in full. So consider that. Similar to using a social media platform that's completely free. This isn't completely free, maybe for some, but if you're not paying for a product in full, know you are the product. And what we talked about today, voice your opinions, let it known, revolutionize the medical field.
All right, take it easy, y'all. Wait.